How are those Sarracenia doing after a full growing season and now heading into the winter time? Well, let's find out. Alright, so obviously I'm recording this from the heat tent inside my garage. And, can't really get too good of a view of it, but plastic sheeting that is, well, pretty much stapled to the rafters up there. There is a plastic roof, of course, too. Pine trees out here, larch and Dawn redwood over there because, whatever. I don't really need to heat them up that much. So, first order of business, you can get kind of a 360 view inside, and there's the roof. All right, so I have a lot to talk about. This might end up being a very long video, but oh well. So first order of business, before we start talking about how this thing functions, why I'm doing this for wintertime setup, and just some general carnivorous plant care, why does this thing exist at all? Well, first order of business is I was going to build a greenhouse. Sometime I was planning to do it in September, late September. My yard is not the perfect place for a greenhouse because there's not a lot of sun exposure. The yard is on the western side behind the house. So let's say the house was here. If we go west, then there's the yard. One neighbor has a big birch tree or beech tree, I forget which one it is. And there's a maple tree, really big old, like 100-year-old maple on the other side, which shades out a lot of the sunlight that would be coming through. So that's why I grow my plants on the patio in the summertime. It kind of gets the most sun exposure. And in the yard, it's just kind of, shadows from the trees from 12 o'clock onwards. So, kind of a, if I built a greenhouse anywhere other than that patio, would get no sun exposure. So kind of not a good situation to be in. Not a perfect greenhouse, but I was going to build one anyways, just because I need to store all these plants for the winter time. I've had very terrible luck just growing Sarracenia and Venus flytraps in the garage for the winter. I know a lot of people say, oh, these are temperate, cold hardy plants. They can withstand winter times, no problem. The problem is, though, if there's lots of freezing and thawing cycles, or even, super cold weather, like negative 25 degrees Fahrenheit for those polar vortex events, those are pretty normal here. With the wind chill, it would be, down to like negative 40. So I do need some protection. So, in a perfect world, I'd have that greenhouse because then you can also have that sunlight exposure, a heating system, and you get a head start on the growing season because the way it's been recently, it's like the plants start growing in May and they finish growing in August. So not really ideal. But back to what I was saying, I was going to do that greenhouse for cold storage anyways, just because I need somewhere to store these plants, and the garage was kind of a hassle. So I was going to say, all right, let's drop like $1,200 on that greenhouse. And then what happened was I was working a seasonal job. So I worked like 3 seasons. That's almost a full year. And then they said, well, the thing was they opened up a full-time position. But then when I applied for it, they said, you know what, we're actually hiring someone else. So for the next 2.5 months, my situation was sort of, well, time to find a brand new job. With a bachelor's degree in zoology, it's not too easy. And when you do find a job, because I eventually, I did land 3 jobs, I have to kind of make a choice now. It's like 15 an hour, so it's nothing too crazy to get excited about. So, that greenhouse project got set back as, those 2 months passed, and I was just draining money out of my bank account without putting anything in. So, had to pretty much plastic wrap this section of the garage. Which seems crazy, but if you think about it, essentially what I've created here is a greenhouse that doesn't get any sun exposure. But I needed this amount of room to store my plants. The plastic traps in heat. And then we have that space heater running over there. And so pretty much the way that this thing functions is exactly how a greenhouse would function in terms of, wind protection and retaining heat inside. because if I, built a greenhouse here in Chicago, I'd have to heat it up in the wintertime with some kind of electric heating or gas heating or something anyways. So essentially what I've done is made a greenhouse that, keeps it buffered at my specific, little niche temperature, which I prefer for carnivorous plants in the wintertime, Sarracenia and Venus flytraps, and that's 32 degrees Fahrenheit to 50 degrees Fahrenheit. That's the range I like to keep mine in. If it gets warmer than that, not really good enough for dormancy. If it gets colder than that, they might freeze, especially the seedlings and small stuff I have. So I do not want it to get below 30, I don't know, let's just say 33 degrees for the simplicity of it. So by constructing this kind of, grow tent with the heater, the temperature does not fall very cold. I think I mentioned this earlier. It's like 40 degrees in here, maybe a little bit higher. And I know I can maintain that pretty stable, even if it's one of those polar vortex events where it's negative 25 outside and this is a detached garage that doesn't get any heat. With the heating cables and the space heater combined, I can easily keep these plants at 40 to 50 degrees if I wanted to all year round. So there's no danger of me killing any of my plants. Now, have I had Sarracenia and Venus flytraps die in the past? Yep. When they got frozen solid, the purpureas, obviously, they can be frozen solid, but even purpurea hybrids struggled for me a lot. And so once I started expanding my collection to, all these different containers of plants, I just thought, what, I already dropped like $1,000 in these Sarracenia, so I don't want them all to die. So that's what we're left with. Next year, I'll probably build that greenhouse. Still have to screw around with this heat tent for this year. So I guess what I can do now is uncover all this and let's go through my Sarracenia collection, because that has expanded greatly in the past, I guess, growing season, just ordering a bunch of stuff off of eBay. All right, so here's kind of a general overview. I mean, this is just kind of a sectioned off part of my garage. So pretty much just mounted all this plastic stuff around and have stuff kind of elevated off of the cement floor. And then, that workbench just kind of stayed there. So basically, this is all insulated because it's in the garage, but it also has all this plastic that kind of traps the heat from that furnace that's running over there. And then, of course, I still have reptile heating cables on all this stuff, just in case it's super cold. Except for these, I'm going to have to replace that pretty soon. I don't think the one in there is functioning. Then, of course, just have kind of this for some lights in case I need to turn them on. But everything is sort of packed away right now. And this larch is just in here because they didn't have room in the garage to actually put it anywhere else. But I mean, I'd prefer to just leave it to freezing temperatures because larches can pretty much handle anything. All right, so let me flip the camera back around. All right, so we can start over here. I snapped that ginkgo's branch off like last week because it's kind of in the way. This isn't the largest area in the world, but whatever. It'll grow back. It's not too huge of a deal. So of course we have this shelter, which is pretty much a box with all my Venus flytraps. That's how Venus flytraps look for their dormancy period. Yeah, I mean, not a whole lot I can say. This is pretty much what I've been doing for the past, I don't know how many, three-ish years. Before then, I think I kept them in the greenhouse and I was still in college. So yeah, pretty normal. Have those heating cables. I was going to insulate it with that orange bubble wrap, but I figured it's in this like heat tent anyways. There's not really going to be too much of a need for me to be bubble wrapping this stuff. And this heating cable isn't on. This is, of course, just for those events when it's like negative 25 degrees. And I feel like that's a specification I sometimes have to make because people might get confused. And, they might look at that and say, oh, wow, well, so you're doing a Venus flytrap dormancy outside and you've basically got this box and the heating cables and that space heater covered with all those blankets right now, which is very unsafe, but it's, it's such a low setting. Actually, so it's not really a big deal. they'd think, oh, well, it's what, like 70 degrees in there. It must be, keeping your plants warm all winter. Don't you need, extra additional light? If you'll notice, those are unplugged, just kind of sitting up there, and everything had blankets over it anyways. And the answer is no. If it's colder than 40 degrees, I don't bother with light, because the photosynthesis rate would be so low, it's pretty much nothing. So if it's like a cold dormancy, you don't need to worry about light. So the next question is, well, if it's a cold dormancy, why do you have the heating cable? Well, like I said earlier, those heating cables and the little space heater, just visualize in your mind that's all on a thermostat. It's not. It's regulated by me, very, meticulous, and just kind of due to experience, I kind of know what the settings need to be and when to turn them on and off based on the temperature outside. But just to keep this simple, let me just explain it and say I have everything on a thermostat. So none of these containers heats up below or above 50, other than those people who watch my previous videos and say, what about that mistake you had last year? That was in March, and I just got kind of lazy and wasn't checking on stuff. But for the majority of the winter, I know when to turn it on, when to turn it off. So far for the month of November, I've only been turning that space heater on for the winter time, so it doesn't get below 30 degrees in here. So that heat is regulated. And if you want to buy yourself a thermostat, if you're recreating, one of these boxes, if you want to get our thermostat, that'll have, a probe inside of there to measure the temperature, and you can set it to turn off at 50 degrees. I would highly recommend you do that. I just don't, because I'm cheap and I like to screw around, I guess. So, yeah, main idea, these aren't heating up to tropical conditions. It's just heating up enough to keep it below freezing. So, with that said, what we have next here is some Drosera regia. These are just out in the open. Out in the open is 40 degrees in here. So I made them go dormant just for the hell of it. Thought, why not? They seem to be declining indoors. And that's probably because I was really lazy. I wasn't feeding them. There was no Osmocote in there, and it's been like 2 years. So probably not the best thing to, keep up the health of the plant. So I kind of just made them go dormant in their little hibernaculas. And I'll probably keep them out here for about a month and then bring them inside. And over here, it's the start of my Sarracenia collection. So we've got Oreophylla, Sand Mountain. Looks kind of weird. I treated that with the Bayer 3-in-1 in case there's like a fungal infection there. So hopefully that will recover, but somebody was gracious enough to include a freebie pack of seeds for that anyway. So worst case scenario, I'll just regrow it from the seeds that are in the fridge right now. Leucophylla and Flava seedlings, Leucopurple lips, Flava rubricorpora. These are very red seedlings, like if you compare them to the others. So these look pretty promising for a nice Morii hybrid. This one is a very tall seedling. It's the same age as all these other ones. So that's kind of promising due to the size. This is a Prometheus and Adrian Slack. And then the other half of that is some other, I think, let me just read the tag. Leucopurple lips and Black Widow. So there's a string down in the soil. I'm probably going to divide that so there's no confusion next year. And then here we kind of also have a double pot of Adrian Slack and Leah Wilkerson, and Adrian Slack and some Morii. Over here, looking kind of sad because the new growth got, crushed by the blankets and kind of died off, but should be fine. This is just some random hybrid that was sent to me from eBay. It was just labeled like clone F or J. It's just some random unlabeled hybrid. It looks very much like a pink excellence, so we'll kind of see how that turns out. Leucophylla burgundy. Super excited about that purchase. I got it relatively cheap. Of course, it was sent to me like a month ago, just a rhizome, so doesn't look too great right now. And then this is pretty much kind of like the same thing like that. This is a Leucophylla burgundy crossed with, I think, Oaky Giant. So it should look very much like that, although theoretically better due to the parentage. Of course, the pictures were darker, looked very much like that. The only difference was that one was more white and this one was more red. Of course, everything died off now, so we'll have to look at those next season. Then over here, we have got a variety of Sarracenia minor. So this is a minor Oaky Giant, and it's 2 different clones of Oaky Giant crossed together. Same thing with this. It's Oaky Giant, 2 different clones of Oaky Giant crossed together. And then just a Sarracenia minor that I've gotten a few years ago, forgot, where it came from, who sold it. It's just labeled Sarracenia minor. Then we have a Sarracenia cordii, which is a Sidicina and Purpurea hybrid. We've got a Sidicina down there and down there. It's just Sidicina from, I think, Nassau County, Florida. And then here, one of my favorites, Sarracenia minor crossed with Sarracenia Sidicina. Very large pictures on this plant. And I think that's it for this bin. And you'll notice I have everything in those bags because I do like to keep these watered during the winter time. It's kind of another question some people ask, well, how much do you water it during the winter time? Well, since I keep it in that range between 33 degrees and 50 degrees Fahrenheit, not very often. It's not warm, so there's not as much transpiration through the leaves. Well, mainly because they're not growing. There's not much evaporation going on. Everything's got blankets on top of it anyways. So there's not really a whole lot to water. That's why there's no need of like a dish of standing water underneath any of these. I just keep those bags so it doesn't flood the bottom of the pot, because bottom of the container, because there's heating cables and towels and blankets in there. So just those plastic bags will prevent any extra water from, pooling in the bottom. But I would say, just standard kind of moist, make sure they don't dry out, but I still keep all of this soil fairly moist. So, yeah, I just, make sure the Sarracenia don't dry out. I mean, the top can dry out a little, but as long as the pot is not completely dry, you should be fine. Just kind of, make sure it's moist. So moving on, we've got oak. We got Sarracenia purpurea mini bog that I've been doing for many years. I just kind of let it get overgrown with weeds and junk. Makes it look more natural. It's pretty much just my laziness of not wanting to clean out any of this. There's a little larch seedling, but I think I planted that too early because obviously there's no nutrients in here. So if I have like a potted plant, I can fertilize and then pot it in here later on, and that'll probably look better. So I might just remove that. Fertilize it for a few years and then place it back, but purpurea, whatever. Then, if we scooch these plants aside, I've got some cool stuff here, at least cool to me. One of these, there's only one of these. This is a Purpurea, Brunswick Beauty, and Leah Wilkerson hybrid. Very unique kind of pitcher plant. So this is one that I had in my collection a number of years ago. If you watch How to Grow Sarracenia, I recorded that in the greenhouse like 3 or 4 years ago when I was still in college, maybe even 5 by now. This is one of the ones I had, and I knew it was a really interesting kind of hybrid. To me now, it's kind of an interesting hybrid. Back then, I think I kind of received it and was like, I guess that's all right. But then as I started acquiring Sarracenia over the years, my old plant died, I think about 3 years ago. So as I started accumulating all this stuff, I was like, you know what? I really miss that Leah Wilkerson Purpurea hybrid that one guy had. And so I actually emailed him about a month ago, and I said, hey, man, do you still grow that thing you sent me about 5 years ago? And he fortunately did have it, so chopped off a little piece of the rhizome and mailed it over. So look forward to growing that next year. It's a nice, interesting, dark little Purpurea hybrid. Then anyways, what we have here is an Adrian Slack and a lot of Night hybrid. It's probably not going to look too good. It was kind of a seedling somebody was selling for like $10. I was like, okay, why not? Maybe that'll be interesting. I think this is one of the ones I bought when I had my obsession with Adrian Slack. But now, of course, that I have obtained Adrian Slack, and actually I have 4 divisions of it in that pot, this is less spectacular, so I'm probably just going to sell it eventually. Over here, we've got Oreophylla. And I guess this is just the pure Oreophylla. Those kind of dark pictures threw me off. This also has about 3 divisions in here. It's from Meadowview. Another big regret. I used to have an Oreophylla, very, small. It was kind of similar to that. Just 2 pictures on it, and it died. And then it was hard for me to find one because, of course, it's within state lines, or you have to order from Meadowview, which is like $80. But I kind of missed it, so I was like, all right, Meadowview, I'll go order one of yours. And then here we have the Oreophylla hybrid. I think, one of these is an unknown hybrid, and the other one is a Oreophylla and Leucophylla. I don't know where the tags are right now. Then this is a Flava Cuprea Rubra Corpora hybrid. I don't know if I'm going to keep it. It's a nice Flava, but there's better stuff out there. It's just kind of one of those freebies somebody sent along, rhizome chunk to me. So I don't know if I want to keep that one. This is turning into one of my favorites. This is Leucophylla, Schnell's Ghost. So I have the Hurricane Creek White, and this is kind of a nice compliment because that Hurricane Creek White turns kind of fully white. A lot of those windows on top, then, a little bit of a pink color sometimes. But this one kind of just has more of that lime green color. Like there's no anthocyanin in this at all. So you get more of like a lime green. So even though the windows are reduced, it still looks kind of interesting. So Leucophylla, Schnell's Ghost, one of my favorites. This is Leucophylla Tarnock. I think I've complained about this a number of times in the past, because it's not good for, cross-pollination, not really. It's probably possible, but kind of more of a pain. Also, the pictures, they're kind of not spectacular. It's usually grown just for that flower, so, whatever. Don't know if I really want to keep growing it. Sarracenia Moriana, this is, I think, an Oreophylla and Flava hybrid, or maybe Oreophylla, Leucophylla. I don't know, it was one of those cheap, I think, forum sales where somebody had, like, a huge pot and they were dividing up the rhizomes. So, Moriana, probably will give it I haven't really seen a mature picture on it, so I'll probably give it, like, 2 more seasons, and then I have a feeling I'm going to sell it. And then this is another Oreophylla hybrid. I'm pretty sure this is the unknown Oreophylla hybrid, but, this is actually Leucophylla Oreophylla. So that other one must have been, it looks like Leah Wilkerson and Oreophylla, something white, but it's an unknown hybrid, so it's just an Oreo hybrid. Anyways, moving on. We have a Flava Ornata here. Very young, so it has tiny pictures, but, hopefully it'll be a nice looking Ornata. If not, I'll probably have to bite the bullet and spend more money on the heavy veined Flava Ornatas. Over here is Sarracenia Scarlet Belle. I rescued this when it was in like a 2-inch little pot at a nursery. So, just for fun, and it looks kind of interesting, so might as well keep it. Then over here is the Sarracenia Flava, just a plain Flava somebody sent to me. Then over here we have small little Stolon growths from the Stolons produced by the mother Darlingtonia. And then just some Purpurea seedling. So moving on, here we've got the Juniper Bonsai just kind of chilling in the middle. It doesn't really need to be insulated as much since it is in this heat tent. And there I just knocked off a branch. Hopefully this isn't dying. Should be fine. I think I just snapped it off. Yeah, all the foliage seems soft and fine, so don't know what that was. All right, so for the next tub, we have a Sarracenia flava hybrid, which is a really weird hybrid, and I've thought about getting rid of it for about this, past year. But it's kind of grown on me, so I don't know. I think I like it better in the fall when it makes that red color instead of just the yellow pitchers, so I don't know if I'm going to keep it. I think just due to the weirdness, I'm going to keep it, but it's not really one of my favorites. This jumbled mess is Sarracenia morii, but I think it's a really crappy morii. It looks more of like a flava. Doesn't really have too much leucophila in it, and since I have all those other morii seedlings in there, probably just going to sell this one. Then we have small stuff around here. This is some freebie somebody sent to me, which I should get labeled. Has the name written on one of the pictures, actually. So this is Titan crossed with Ruby. Okay, yeah, I have it written down somewhere, so I might have to label that before I forget completely, and then I'll be kicking myself that I don't have it labeled and I don't remember the parentage. Rotundifolia and intermedia, little sphagnum pots, and then a pot of Venus flytrap seedlings. Nothing really too spectacular in here. Nothing really cultivar worthy, but it's, a nice little pot of Venus flytrap seedlings. So it seems like they're fully non-functional right now, but that's to be expected for dormancy. We have the Darlingtonia. Looks kind of like shit because I think there's some kind of disease that was going on. A lot of them had a lot of spots on their leaves. Now it's not as apparent since the foliage has been dying. But, just had it started getting all these tiny little red dots. So I've been treating it with that Bayer 3-in-1, and it seems to be doing better. But I just kind of figured, that was heat from the summertime, and I let it go a little bit too long, I think, without any treatment. So probably going to be another crappy growing season next year, but I have seeds and those stolen growths, so I'll probably just redo a whole kind of Darlingtonia mini bog. Over here, what do we have? Some seedlings. This is a Oreophila and Flava hybrid. Kind of crappy. I sold the mother plant because I didn't think, okay, never mind. This is a yellow Catesbii crossed with Flava. So that was a freebie, and I don't know if I really want it. I feel like an asshole for saying this, but don't send me freebies unless it's some really, really good stuff, because I just don't have the room for all of this stuff. This is the Flava Oreophila hybrid. And then this, it's just a Sarracenia and Purpurea heterophylla. Yeah, anthocyanin free, so it doesn't make any anthocyanin, just has these kind of lime yellowish pictures on it. What else is in here? This is one of my favorites. Well, maybe kind of. So this is a Sarracenia. No, it's not. It is a Purpurea crossed with Sarracenia flava. So that's a Catesbii, but it's a Ruglii flava, so it has that nice throat pattern on it. Similar to Sarracenia, I think, what is it, Sorrow or Sarracenia Tina. That's a cultivar I've been wanting for a while, but this was kind of listed online, and I was like, well, it looks pretty cool, so I bought this in the meantime. This is a Oreophila and Alabamensis hybrid. Looks pretty interesting. I think it looks mostly like an Oreophila, but it gets that weird, long, snake-like growth that kind of flops over in the springtime, then phyllodia, and then only its best pictures in the fall. So kind of a crappy hybrid for 3/4 of the year, but I don't know, I'm keeping it around. And then over there, Perp Smurf and Purpurea Montana. I think that's South Carolina 003 from Barry Rice. Should make some nice, interesting patterns on those pictures once it's fully matured and kind of later on in the growing season, or I don't know when, if it's spring or fall, but apparently it can get some pretty pale pictures with those veins, kind of like a contrast against it. So we'll just kind of see how that turns out. So the final bin here has, of course, two of my favorites. My big, giant Leia Wilkerson. Actually, it's probably not that giant. It's probably like a medium-sized plant because I think they can get a bit bigger. That's the nicest picture from this last October growing season. Doesn't show its potential full glory, though, because there's not as much white on that picture. Adrian Slack, also, now later on in the season, those pitchers were fed pretty heavily and kind of, dying now, flopping over, plus the blanket kind of weighed it down, so, not a whole lot to see. Plus, like, the last remaining good pitcher, it wasn't that white this growing season, there's not really much of a throat patch, so, but I got all those mailed to me last autumn, so this was kind of like a recovery season. Hopefully next springtime it'll start pumping out some better pitchers. What else do we have in here other than those two? I know there's some cool stuff, but I gotta get this labeled. I think this I know it is Sarracenia Night Sky, but I don't have it labeled, and I should, because I have our reedy eye or ready eye somewhere in here. Where could it be? Well, here's the picture from it. So that's the Sarracenia reedy eye, and they look, somewhat similar, so I'm probably gonna have to label that. I bought these because, well, I think this one was a freebie, and I noticed it has a really nice purple color on it, and then this one kind of also had a nice darker purplish color, so bought those two. There is a bunch of filiformis sundews in here, along with supposed Morii, but it looks kind of weird. But it is from Carnivorous Plant Nursery, and it was sold as Morii, so it should be Morii. If not, I'm giving it 2 seasons or 3 to get those adult pitchers on it, and we'll see what it is. Sarracenia umlauftiana, one of my favorites, just chilling down there. Then over here, we have a Leucophila. This was my Hurricane Creek White. Of course, it got fed pretty heavily, so that picture's all, dead on the inside and necrotic tissue, but up top, it looks pretty good still. There's a lot of pink spots on it, but, everything's going to look kind of crappy now that it's the end of the season. I'm just kind of going through what I have. It's kind of like a general inventory out of curiosity. Over here, what is this? Looks like something kind of crappy. Or maybe not. This is Flava rubricorpora, although it might be crappy because not every rubricorpora is made equally, so we'll just kind of grow that and see how it does. It hadn't really made any good pitchers this growing season, so hopefully, but I'll probably have to buy like the, well, I don't have to, but I'll probably be tempted to buy like a, Atropurpurea, or like the Sarracenia Flava Wakama, or Wakama. Don't know what the, proper pronunciation is, but hopefully people know what I'm saying. Just a really nice, red Flava, if that one turns out to be garbage. There's Sarracenia redii. This is Leucophila, red throat stripe, but it is a Morii because only something with Sarracenia flava in its parentage would have a throat stripe like that. But otherwise looks pretty much like a Leucophila. Nice, vibrant pattern on it, like comparing it to that Hurricane Creek White or like the Dana's Delight. Has nice thick lines and kind of really nice definition in those white splotches on it. So one of my favorite plants. Of course, like I mentioned, Sarracenia Dana's Delight. Also, I think it's kind of underrated for what it is. Nice, cheap hybrid. So that's kind of growing, back until, I got it as a very small rhizome division, so just trying to bulk everything up. Red Rubra Warii, got it as a freebie, no idea how that's going to turn out. And then Rubra Gulfensis, Anthocyanin free. Started making some pitchers later on in the season, which of course started dying now that it's super cold out. And then to finish it off, we have a Sarracenia Red Morii. So it's a Morii that theoretically turns more red. So I think that covers everything. Sarracenia bin number 1, Sarracenia bin number 2, Sarracenia bin number 3, and Sarracenia bin number 4. Then, of course, the Venus flytraps, some random trees that I have in here, and that's about it. So let me switch the camera back around. All right, so that's how stuff is. It was kind of a long video because, I don't know, I'm long-winded and there's not really any other way I'm going to go through a whole Sarracenia tour without taking 20 minutes of time to talk about it. But I have new stuff coming out, of course. Cephalotus Grow Guide, Lowland, Nepenthes Bicalcarata Terrarium, Helium for a terrarium redesign. Probably will be doing an update on those Drosera Regias that I'm experimenting with. Stuff that I'm probably forgetting now too. So now that I have my new phone, the camera is working, I have storage space so I can edit these videos again and upload them to YouTube. So if you're not subscribed already, make sure you hit that subscribe button down below. Also, I went on a vacation to Poland. I've got snail videos from Poland. I have snail videos from Florida because I was in Florida in August that I never recorded or never uploaded that tree snail video. So a lot of footage is coming. Make sure you hit that subscribe button down below. I'll be back really soon with some more videos.